I'll be presenting our study with me and Georgia, my supervisor, and I'm an MA student at Çanakkale University, and Georgia is my supervisor. Sadly, she couldn't be here today with us, but she sends her regards to all of you. Before beginning the presentation, I would like to introduce you with the flow of the presentation. So first of all, I'm going to touch upon the background to the study. So I'm going to introduce the intersectionality theory, and then teacher identity and nativeness and non-nativeness dichotomy, and then move on with research questions, methodology, followed by findings, discussion, and suggestions for further research. Okay, well, in its most basic sense, intersectionality is about understanding the complexity in the world and in human experiences and in people. So how can we define intersectionality with regards to identity is that, as Lawrence and Nagashima state, identities are not innate. So we're not born with identities, but identities are imposed on us. So we're labeled and categorized in the society. So it's the identities are socially produced and they are multidimensional. So what makes a teacher democratic in the classroom is labeled on that teacher. So therefore, gender, sexuality, whiteness, race, and culture can all play important roles in affecting teacher identity. So when we search for the definitions for language teachers' identity in the literature, we came across these descriptions on teachers' identities beginning from 1992, ending in 2017. So when you look at the descriptions, so it starts with the image of the self. So when you look at the mirror, what you see is your own identity, your own face, your own thoughts, your own beliefs. But when you begin to, analyze the identity, descriptions on the identity, so you can see the highlighted words like political, social, and cultural contexts influenced by people in the society, and it's reconstructed through personal and professional experiences. So identity is not something like, I'm a democratic teacher who allows his students to speak in the classroom all the time. No, how do your students perceive you as a teacher? How do your colleagues see you as a teacher? So these all affect your own identity, your own sexuality, your own religion, your worldview. These are all the elements that are like pieces of the puzzle that affect your own identity. Well, of course, there is this dichotomy of nativism and non-nativism in the literature. So we should better account for Medici's search on the dichotomy of nativeness and non-nativeness. So Medici suggests that in 1992, language competencies of native teachers are far superior than non-native teachers. For example, teaching pronunciation is better with native teachers than non-native teachers. And then again, there is this concept like native speakerism. So it's about introducing a superior, a privileged culture, Western identity and Western culture to the EFL context. Of course, there are some studies that suggest there is still this superiority of native teachers in the EFL context. Well, if you see that, well, institutions and private schools favor native teachers. Their advertisements for selecting teachers are based on requirements that could only be accounted for native teachers. So why do we need integrity research review on this issue? As you saw in the previous slides, beginning from 1998 to 2017, it was the descriptions on identity changed so much, and many studies in the literature accounted for the non-native English-speaking teachers' identities. So they explored the non-native teachers instead of native teachers most of the time. But also there was this too much focus on professional identity. So what we mean by professional identity in the literature is mostly based on the teacher's own fluency and accuracy. So it's related to the language education itself. And societal and critical factors are mostly ignored or explored indirectly in the study. So that's why we wanted to conduct an integrity research review to combine all these studies and generate new knowledge on this issue. So of course, questions remain. So where is the critical part of identity construction? So what about diverse variables affecting their identity? So how would identities of native teachers turn out to be formed eventually? So do they feel privileged? Do they feel emancipated? Do they feel themselves superior or inferior or neutral? How do they perceive EFL local teachers in that context? So in order to answer these, we formed two research questions. First of all, what are the factors affecting native teachers' identity constructions in EFL settings? And two, do the native English-speaking teachers feel privileged or emancipated in the process of identity construction? So of course, we created this term emancipation for our own study to account for native teachers' critical questioning of their Western identity and privilege. As for the methodology part, so let me first explain what is integrity research review in the literature. So integrity research review generates new knowledge about a topic through reviewing, critiquing, and synthesizing representative literature. So just like in any other review studies, you combine all the articles relevant to your own topic, and then you create new information. So that's why we most of the time use the inductive content analysis in integrity research review, because you are creating some other new knowledge that exists in the data of the previous studies. So detailed information on specific topics are provided through integrity research review. So the process is like you need to have a problem. So you need to formulate the problem. You need to problematize the topic, and then you collect data through searching for several databases like Google Scholar, SSCI index journals, and then you evaluate your data. I think this is the most important part in integrity research review, because most of the time the topic that you're exploring is not in some of the articles that you found that you considered to be the example of your topic. So that's why you need to skim and scan the articles several times to understand if that article is suitable for your own integrity research review. And then, of course, data analysis and interpretation occurs. So we found 18 journal articles. So 14 of them were conducted in Asian contexts, and 17 of them adapted qualitative research design, and 9 of them conducted between the years of 2020 and 2022. So these studies are rather recent. And also, we scanned Google Scholar, Eric, Taylor and Francis, Elsevier, and Mendeley. Initial search yielded hundreds of studies, but most of them were, comparing non-native and native teachers or exploring the non-native teachers' identities. So of course, we use key terms in our own search on Google Scholar and other databases, like, for example, in identity construction, marginalization of native English-speaking teachers, and nativism in EFL education, so some other key terms. So these were the articles that we found. All of them are journal articles. So you can see the information on the type of publication, context, methodology, data collection tools, and journal information. So we had two factors for the eligibility of these studies to be included in our own IRR. So they must explore native teachers' identities exclusively, and two, they must be conducted in EFL context. So these were the two factors that we were looking for in searching for and including these studies in our own research. So as you can see, most of the studies are conducted in Asian countries. So as I said earlier, we benefited from inductive content analysis. So first we made sense of the data, we skimmed, we scanned each of the articles several times, and we started open coding process, and then we grouped and categorized these codes into groups and themes, and then we wrote and reported the analysis. Of course, for reliability issues, we benefited from peer debriefing, which is about the extensive discussions among the researchers. Okay, as for the findings, for the first research question, factors affecting native teachers' identity construction in EFL settings. Well, as you can see, there were two factors. One is exclusively about the gender, sexuality, and body image, and the other is about the Western and EFL norms comparison. So we found 7 articles for the first factor and 11 articles for the second factor. So first of all, let's focus on the gender. I won't explain all of the findings here because of the time constraint. So I only focus on the important parts. First of all, as you can see, a category marginalization of female native teachers occurred because in some of the studies, as you can see in the parentheses, these all are codes for the articles in our own research, like A2, A9. So in that study, the first sentence, so there was this traditional femininity attribution towards the female native teachers in the EFL context. In one of the articles that was conducted in Japan context, so it was said that the female native teachers were needed to be maternal, so they needed to be mothers instead of teachers towards the EFL students in that context. So they needed to perform motherly duties. Yes, thank you. And then we can say that female native teacher face was used as commercial tool. For EFL schools, female native teachers' faces were important because they used their own appearances as the introduction towards the world that, well, we have native teachers, so come and get your children to our schools. So it was like a commercial tool or a trophy for the schools. And for sexuality, for example, there was this male native teacher dominance. So, for example, Japanese students preferred white, Western, and heterosexual male native teachers. So these teachers' identities were sexualized in that context. And also, the female native teachers' physical appearances were commented on or biased in the EFL context through commenting on their physical appearances. So as for the clash of Western and EFL norms, so there was this we and they language. So the native teachers were alienated in the local context by the local teachers, and they were considered as distant others in the local hierarchy. So they were marginalized. And then there was this racial discrimination against black native teachers. So racial slurs were used against them, like the N-word and other local slurs in local language. And they were all the black people, black native teachers considered as people coming from Africa. And then there was this focus on the traditional language education. Each of the native teachers in nearly every study commented on the Asian, particularly in Asian English language education as traditional, so they were promoting rote and memory-based learning. So as for the being privileged or emancipated, so native teachers most of the time joined in political discourse of EFL countries, so they commented on the political discourse of the EFL countries, whereas the non-native teachers were not doing anything or commenting on the political discourse. So they felt to be the privileged ones in that context. And they thought that they were teaching pronunciation better than the non-native teachers, and they considered themselves the cultural ambassadors because they introduced a superior culture to the EFL context, such as the American dream for the American teachers. So emancipatory identities of native teachers took years of experience. So they bonded with local teachers in time over years, actually. And then they said that they become more caring towards EFL students in time. So years of experience and years of time were needed to be emancipated from their privileged identities in the EFL context for the native teachers. So as for the discussion, for gender, sexuality, and culture, we can say that Asian, since most of the studies are conducted in Asian countries, Hofstede's conceptualization of culture still stands true, because in most of the Asian countries, there's this large power distances and masculinity. So as I said earlier, so there was this traditional femininity attribution towards female native teachers. And the male teachers were, sexualized in the eyes of the female local students, in the Japanese context, for example, in one of the studies. And also, there is this stereotype against Western feminine identity. So they need to, the local people think that they need to adapt to the local culture instead of, wearing some other clothes that were not preferred in the local context. So, and secondly, there is this focus on using the white native teachers' face as commercial tools. So they were considered as a trophy rather than a, teacher who is teaching his or her own subject matter to the students. And also, we can still say that Kachru's three circles still hold ground, because inner circle is prioritized in EFL context. So, why do native teachers feel privileged in EFL context is because EFL contexts themselves provide privileges to the teachers in that context. So that's why most of the native teachers feel privileged instead of feel emancipated in EFL countries, because they are provided with opportunities that non-native teachers were not provided with. Okay, as for the conclusion, I can say that still the dichotomy of native and non-nativeness is still a hot debate. As you can see, there are, recent studies on this issue. And also, there is an increase in the exploration of Black native teachers' identities in EFL contexts. So this is also a rising issue in the literature. So for further research, we suggest that more studies should be conducted outside of Asian countries, like in the Middle East, Africa, South America. And ethnographic research design could be adapted to explore native teachers' identities in an in-depth manner. And there should be we suggest that there could be an exclusive focus on power relations in this research, because this would provide insights towards managerial and administrative effect on native teachers' identity construction in such contexts. So thank you for listening. These are our references. Thank you.
Not a question, but a contribution. In your literature, you talked about the strengths of native English teachers. Yeah. Literature also has abundant studies on the strengths of non-native teachers too. Here, we are all non-natives. I don't see any natives here. You work here. You should get sorry for bullying. But we have our strengths too. Perhaps in such studies, we should include that too. And as an English teacher myself, I have experienced similar problems. But I always defended the ground, saying that as a non-native teacher, I have this the similar background that my students had. This was the biggest strength that I had, and the native teachers didn't have. But at the end of the day, saying these, I would say this is a highly complex issue, and instead of looking at it as a dichotomous way, like native, non-native, we should approach it as a humanized the way, as thinking like each native or each non-native has their own strengths and weaknesses. So it's like we are non-natives, but it doesn't mean that we are not. We are inferiors. We are equals. We have different strengths. We can work together, collaborate together to make teaching more abundant.
Yeah. Thank you for your contribution. So, any other questions or comments? Yes, please.
So you might have mentioned the same this at the very beginning. So in this research, for your native teachers, were you looking at actually qualified ELP teachers or quote-unquote native teachers who backpack and who kind of destroyed our industry?
Yeah, this is, in interactive research reviews, so you don't have participants. So we've analyzed the research conducted on this issue. So, if I can just, okay. If I can just go back to the material section, maybe I can show it to you again. Yeah. So these were the articles that we found. So, and you can see the eligibility of the study. So they should be conducted with native teachers exclusively and must be conducted in EFL context. So, we do not know the native teachers, of course. So we just rely on the author's descriptions of those native teachers. So that's why that could be a limitation for our own study. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, please.
First of all, thank you for your highly detailed presentation. And I'm wondering your opinion about that. Do you think that inner circle members still are custodians of English all around the world?
Yeah.
Or they are defending ownership of English again?
Well, as far as the I've seen from those articles.
I mentioned kashrus.
Yeah, I know. So, as in the discussion section, as I said earlier, I believe that native teachers are still at an advantage over non-native teachers because let me give you an example from my own experience. So I was studying at a private institution like 2 or 3 years ago, and there was this Afghani teacher, so that came from Afghanistan, but he was advertised as the native teacher because of his blackness, so black native teacher. So
but he's not
yeah, I know, but no one questions that. So no one questions that.
So instead of being a member of the inner circle, of being a non-member of the expanding circle.
But the parents believe that that teacher is black, so he comes from America.
So it's like a non-Turkish speaking equals native English speaker in Turkey.
Yeah.
In most schools.
Yes, exclusively. So I think, it could be true, but for me, it should not be.
All right, then, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Or that will be all? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.